So, yes, please. Okay, one important job done. So let me move to the session one. Well, the session title, you may wonder, what's the Analects and Abacus? Well, today's sort of a discussion, we'd like to focus on the sustainable financing and the role of ethic. And I think in Asia in general, we have some sort of shared cultural idea, regardless is Islamic Sharia idea or other cultural ethical behavior. We think that there are some common theme in Asian culture, which could be very important in the context of sustainable finance. So this session, I would like to invite the chairman, Faiz. Well, I don't think I need to introduce himself, but just allow me to give his long experience of sort of auditing industry. He has been the chairman of PwC Malaysia for 11 years. And also, he has a long experience in the auditing business in Malaysia and also UK. So he's seen various corporate activities from auditor's perspective, which I believe gives us a lot of insights. I also would like to invite Mr. Ken Shibusawa. He's a great-great-grandson of Eiichi Shibusawa. The Eiichi Shibusawa is now the figure of 10,000 yen banknote. And he is known as sort of the father of Japanese industrialization. So the way in Japan moves from samurai time to modern Japan, Eiichi Shibusawa, he established hundreds of companies, starting from first bank in Japan, or a textile company, or various industry. And actually, he really emphasized the importance of ethics. And the title of this session is his book. And Ken Shibusawa, Mr. Ken Shibusawa is the great-great-grandson of Eiichi Shibusawa. And very interestingly, he's very well known in the Japanese finance community as a leader of impact investment. So he runs the investment company called the Commons Asset Management. He's a founder and a chairman. And also, he provides a lot of advisory service to the industry. Also, he's the one of the important member of a new form of capitalism established by the former Prime Minister Kishida. I think he's a very important and very good person to discuss this important topic. So allow me to invite first Shibusawa-san for his presentation, and then I'd like to invite Chairman Faiz for the discussion. So first, Shibusawa-san, please.
You have my slides up? I sent you. Okay. Good morning, everybody. My name is Eiichi Shibusawa. Wanted to first thank the Asian Development Bank and SC Malaysia, and especially Chairman Faiz for giving this opportunity and inviting me to Malaysia. And wonderful to be here with you today. I think Japan currently is in a new era. And so if you look back in the past administration, there was a lot of focus on startups, which is necessary to bring new value, new creation to the new era of Japan. But compared to, let's say, like 30 or 40 years ago, it wasn't just about starting your company, getting it listed, getting rich. It was almost all about the social innovation. So the government was pushing for social innovation startups. But if you think about it, this is not a new thing here in Japan. 150 years ago, there was this startup. You have an idea what this was? Actually, Tomo gave you a hint because this was a bank. This is the first bank in Japan called the First National Bank, which is part of Mizuho Bank. Back then, a word bank didn't exist in Japan, so it was a startup. And what was the reason when the startup was established? It was the fact that to encourage a new era for our country, you need currency to be circulated all around the society. So that's why the bank was established, and it was a startup for social innovation. Now, for currency to circulate within the society, you need another innovation, and that was actually manufacturing paper. And so this company called OG Paper was established using Western technology. It was one of the first large-scale manufacturing facility in Japan, so that was another innovation. And if you think about communication, we think about the phone, we think about the internet these days, but if you think about it, paper back then was a mode of communication, so that was a very important social innovation to have. Back 150 years ago or so, Japan was an emerging country, so we need to earn foreign currency. How do we do that? Well, there was textiles, as Tomo mentioned, was sought after from the world. And so this company called Osaka Boseki was established in Osaka, Japan, merged with a lot of other companies. It's today known as Toyobo, still headquarters in Osaka. Now, if you put that valuable merchandise on a ship, shipped it off, and if it sank, you're in big trouble, and so you need another social innovation, and that's insurance. And so the first insurance company in Japan was formed, called Tokyo Fire and Marine these days. So these four companies, what are their common characteristics. Well, one is that today there are all four major Japanese companies that everybody knows about, and all four at their genesis were all startups. And then the reason why that startup was established was to bring on new social innovation to welcome a new era for Japan back then. Um, Another characteristic, common characteristic, is that back then businesses were basically family businesses, one family. Um, these weren't family businesses. Many people gathered together and put money into it to establish a company, what we call today a shareholding company, right? And so that was all four. And so, well, sometimes you need to sell the shares, sometimes you need to buy the shares, and so guess what? You need a stock exchange. And so the Tokyo Stock Exchange was established back then. Back then, businesses need to show their presence in society, but if it's just one company, it doesn't become a consensus. And so they decided to merge together and form the Chamber of Commerce. And so if you think about it, back 150 years ago, in Japan, what was the role of business? Well, it was actually a lot of the social innovation to bring about a new era for Japan. It wasn't, of course, just businesses. There are other social enterprises that was launched. Education for women, that was very important, girls especially. And so the Tokyo Jogakukan was established. And back then, of course, you needed to care for the elderly, for the sick, for the handicapped. But there's another big social issue back there in those days in Japan, and it was homeless children without parents. And so they didn't just gather to protect them, but they gave them training so that they can go independent. Yoikuin was established back then. So many of these social enterprises was also established about 150 years ago in Japan. So if you flash back, so there are hundreds of years where the samurai-looking, young men were running around all around Japan, doing their thing. But within a very short span of time, maybe a decade or so, these guys, they changed, they transformed, they changed their clothing, basically, right? And who's this young individual? Well, this is my great-great-grandfather, Shibusawa Eiichi. Back in 1867, the Paris Exposition was established, and he was part of a delegation that was sent there by the old what turned out to be the last shogun government, as basically the accounting person for the entire delegation. And then, but prior to that, actually, he wasn't in the government. He was a farmer merchant family. But he had revolutionary ideas about a new era, and even tried to overturn the local government. So he was kind of a renegade. But one thing led to another, and he became part of the shogun government. And he got a chance to go abroad for the first time in Paris. And there he got the instruction of this person called Paul Ferrell-Hirard, and basically learned about banking and bond transactions and exchanges and whatnot. And so if you think about it, the formation, what turned out to be Japan's capitalism, wasn't Anglo-Saxon like from the UK or the United States, but it was actually imported from France. So turns out this Eiichi Shibusawa is currently known as today as the father of Japanese capitalism, because not only did he had it in hand of starting that 4 companies, but almost up to 500 and about 600 various forms of social activities and enterprises. But he never used the word capitalism in Japanese shihon shugi. He used a different word, and it was called gappon shugi. What does this mean? Well, gappon in Chinese characters, the first character means to integrate, to put together. Hon is like capital, so putting together. That's kind of the image. And so when he first established the first bank in Japan, this is what he said, because a bank, nobody had seen a bank before, right? And so he basically said, a bank is like a mighty river. Money that doesn't gather there is merely a puddle of water or dripping dewdrop, even though it has the ability to bring wealth and to the people and the nation, its effects are unrealized. So if it's just a dripping dewdrop, basically has no power, But if it gathers as a bank, starts the flow, they gather together, and it becomes a mighty river. And there's that, power behind that. So that was his image of a bank, and hence what he later described it as gappon shugi. You can't do anything by oneself, but if you gather together, you can do a lot. And so it was not, for him, it wasn't just about the financial capital, but it was also about the human capital of gathering people flowing in the right direction. So he wasn't just talking about bringing riches to a certain class of people in society, let's say like a shareholder, but basically in today's language, I think we'd call it stakeholder, with so many different, participants in the value creation. Unless you have the various stakeholders, you're not going to create value. So I would interpret this gappon shugi in present-day language as stakeholder capitalism. Now, as the great-great-grandson of Shibusawa Eiichi, there's one thing that kind of bothered me just a little bit. It's the fact that, well, he had established, they say, up to about 500 companies, but there wasn't a single share left to his great-great-grandson. So I was a little bit, but not annoyed, but a little bit, thinking about that. But I figure, H-san, he was that kind of character. But about 23 years ago, when I established my company, I discovered something. I discovered actually that Eiichi had left a wonderful, wonderful treasure of assets. And why is this wonderful? Because it won't ever go away. It doesn't decrease, and there's no inheritance tax. and what this treasure was I realized that he had left lots of words, actually. Lots of words in a lot of different places, and it was all documented. And it's a words of 100, 150 years ago, but if you reinterpret it into present-day language, I found that, it can be really used. He seems like a very nice, round-faced man, right? And he seems very gentle and this kind of stuff. But actually, if you read these words, though, he's really angry. And the reason why he's angry is things like, hey, it says, Japan, we could be much, much better than this. New companies, we can be much, much better than this. Corporate managers, we can be much, much better than this. Private citizens, much, much better than this. So basically what he was saying is he wasn't satisfied with the status quo, that there's always a future vision-oriented approach. That's why he was a little bit irritated all the time. But the one, and I can't share with you all the treasures of the words that he had left, but the one that's representative is this concept, longo and soroban, which means absolutely nothing to all of you, but longo is actually, it's the Analects. So basically, Analects of Confucius, which means basically morality, doing the right thing. It's about people to people, or people to society, basically, right? And what's the soroban? Well, it's the original handheld calculator. So it basically measures how much money you made. So this is basically business economics. And he basically said that these two has to be integrated, not separate. Actually, the Sonongon Soroban is a book that's been published back in 1916. And it's a compilation of his public speaking and things like this. But if you think about it, 1916 in Japan, what sort of era was that? Well, it's about 100 years ago, but Japan had basically emerged from the emerging country status 150 years ago, and had basically kind of caught up with the West after the Russo-Japanese War. So basically, Japan was in probably the wealthiest state it has ever been since the establishment of the country, basically back then. But why was he angry? Because he said, if you just keep the status quo, it might just sort of fade away. And guess what? He passed away in 1931 in November. 2 months prior, what had happened? The Japanese army had invaded Manchuria, and things got really, really bad afterwards. And so basically, to me, when I reread this Dongo and Soroban 100 years later, basically, is the fact that what was the message? Was basically it says, this is like the very first line in the first chapter, first verse that's in this book. Basically saying if wealth creation is not ethical, then that wealth will not be sustainable. So basically, this message of Dongo and Soroban, not or increases efficiency, and you're trying to put together something that apparently doesn't. It looks like oil and water, but actually, like in salad dressings, if you mix it up, it tastes very good, right? And so, but it's about trying to merge things that to the common eye, it looks like it's in different arenas, but putting it together actually is the secret ingredient for new creation. The or is very, very important for increasing efficiency and productivity, so that's very important. But or is something that already exists, and you're comparing, and you're moving it forward. So this, in that sense, is no new creation. But if you're trying to put together two completely what looks like different, put it together, that's where you get new creation. The reason why I focus on this creation, value creation, in the fact is that what is ethics? Does that mean, well, you do good and you can't do bad? But does ethics mean that you just follow the compliance manual? Probably not, right? That's not really what ethics is all about. To me, Eiichi always had this thought of how do you practice the ethics, not just talk about it. How do you practice it in your daily life? Well, on a small level, if you see a problem, an issue, you don't pretend you don't see it. You try to fix it. That's being ethical, right? And so if you put it in a macro sort of level, you see problems in global warming. You see problems in social disparity. We just don't turn a blind eye, but you try to do something about it. So it's basically trying to provide solutions to these global issues we have currently all around the world in present-day language. And this is what I think this ethics and capitalism needs to go together. And so in a sense, what it's saying, it's an inclusive form of capitalism, not leaving things behind. It is a Dongon Soroban. And that's how you have sustainable growth. Now, this is Shibusawa Eiichi, the way I interpret it in the present-day language. But what was interesting was for the past 3 years under the former prime minister, he formed this council called the New Form of Capitalism, and I won't go into detail because of the time. But basically, he was talking about integrating externalities that capitalism left behind to integrate it. So it's basically what it's saying. It's an inclusive form of capitalism, and so it resonates very, very almost the same as my interpretation of what my great-great-grandfather said. Now, through this, through our council discussion, we were able to put some interesting initiatives, including one on human capital, not just the financial shareholder capital to create value, but you need the human capital side of the equation, obviously, to create value. And another important aspect of it is actually this concept of impact investing. What is impact investing? Well, I won't go into detail, but it's basically, if you think about investing, it's going from a two-dimensional risk return to this third dimension of impact, which is what? Which is trying to provide solution with intent, provide solutions to problems in the environment and society. This is in Japanese, so obviously it's not making sense to you, but I just want to give you a feel of what's happening in Japan in impact. There's lots of different things going on in impact. And I'm a little bit biased, yeah, because I was a part of this council. I am the great-great-grandson of Mr. Shibusawa Eiichi. But to me, this concept of impact investing, if you put it together in present language, what's impact? Well, that part, you can say it's the ethical part that I mentioned earlier about practicing that ethics of providing solutions to the society and environment. and investments is the abacus, right? And so it's, to me, what's happening, it's the modern interpretation of my great-great-grandfather coming in back to the present era. And this is Mr. Sir Ronald Cohen, he's known as the father of impact investing, basically, but have been working with Ronnie for the last, over the last decade or so. But he's calling impact as post-ESG. And my interpretation of post-ESG, if you're interested, I could talk about a little bit earlier, or later in the discussion with the chairman. But it's basically the corporate side that's creating the value to have the intent to say, hey, this is our value. Investors, what do you think? Rather than the other way around, where the investors are telling the corporates what you should be doing. So maybe I should stop here.
So I'd like to invite Chairman Faiz and Shibusawa-san, please sit in front. So Shibusawa-san, thank you so much for your very interesting presentation. And actually, I didn't know you didn't receive any from your great-great-grandfather. But actually, that is also quite interesting point, whether the Eiichi Shibusawa, he focused on the Gappon Shugi, sort of stakeholders capitalism. And no, it's very much different from the family business. Of course, in Japan, there are so many big company group starting from family business. But the Shibusawa-san really sort of created the foundation of Japanese capitalism. And the way he sort of emphasized in the book is very much, to me, similar to the concept of Islamic finance. Actually, the Chairman Faiz this morning explained. Well, my first question to the Chairman, please reiterate some of the key point or similarity do you think in the context of Islamic finance and what just Shibusawa-san just mentioned.
Thank you, Tomo-san. Well, firstly, thank you very much, Ken, for that presentation, because in a way, it's exactly what we would like Islamic finance to be. Meaning, I mean, of course, there's a modern incarnation of people, planet, profit. But the whole concept of Islamic finance is about trying to meet the needs of the Muslims, but also to encourage them to do it in the right way. I mean, that underpins things. So maybe a bit of background before I answer your question, Tomo. Part of the reason why we invited Ken to come speak at this conference is because it has been kind of clear to me over the years that a crooked person will interpret things crookedly. And now that I've moved from being a consultant to a regulator, it becomes even more apparent. I mean, there's only so many people I can send to jail. There's only so much I can fine. There's only so much I can do as a regulator. But if the person themselves out there, particularly, you know, in our world, the corporates, if the leaders in the corporates don't have that guiding principle, or in Johnny Depp terms, the compass, or Qiblat, or whatever it is they use to tell them the right and wrong, they will always make the wrong decisions. And that's why when Tomo-san kind of explained to me about, sorry, I was trying to figure out how to translate great-great-grandfather to us. So I think it's Tok Moyang, right? 4 generations. So Ken's Tok Moyang, in a way, kind of embodied that. And what Ken didn't mention is that he had written a lot of articles about the fact that you could be both ethical and rich. And I think that was the bit that resonated with me, because I need something to talk to my corporates to say that, look, I can't mandate everything. I can't pass rules on everything. I need you to understand the consequences of your decision, that it's not just about profit, that your shareholders are now your stakeholders want to know how you made the profit and what did you do. Now, of course, as a regulator, we'll punish the end parts, right? If they really misbehave. But the whole middle part is what we want to try and raise it. And that's why we need role models. We need role models like your Tok Moyang to kind of show that actually you can be very successful and yet be ethical, ethically founded. So then it comes to us in Malaysia. I think we've had in a smaller scale people of that caliber. I would say that when we obtained independence in 1957, it created a number of people who felt the need to nation build. And these people actually set up many of the institutions that you see in Malaysia who did it not for profit, but because they felt that was what was needed. And so we can sit here, but actually we are standing on their shoulders. They created this infrastructure, this system, these laws, these governance. And in fact, many of us in this hall today from Malaysia would not be here were it not for our forefathers realizing that the only way the nation could go forward was education. And that's what we've created. We've now created a middle class 60 years later, which didn't exist at independence. And as I said, many of us sitting here today would not be here without that affirmative action. But in the process, I just feel that somehow we've kind of become so materialistic to the point where we forget the ethics. So about, I think it was 2 months ago, Haniza and I were in Oxford listening to one of our sultans. As I explained last night, we have 9. So this is the more articulate sultan. And he stood up. And in fact, before he went to give his speech, he turned to me and says, Faiz, I'm rubbishing capitalism. I said, please go ahead. So he stood up and he whacked into us. And this line he left was, the time of unfettered capitalism is over. You know, meaning that you have to be accountable for your behavior. And so you can see that it's coming back again. Now we realize that it's not just about making money, it's how you make the money. And it's also your own ethical principles in doing it. And so that's why, Islamic finance is just another manifestation, because when you say being ethical, being good, what does that mean? So in Islam, you're supposed to give a certain portion of your wealth to the poor. You're supposed to create ilmu, knowledge, as your legacy. You're obviously expected to bring up your family in a particular way, but ultimately it is to do good. And so there are many parallels on what I hear about, Ken's Tok Moyang, which I can see. I mean, I would be proud to call him a good Muslim. But he's just good. I mean, in his own faith, in his own way, his principles are, to me, quite universal. So that's why I was very happy to know that you were able to reach out to Ken. I'm only sorry that you don't have much time. Ken just flew in from Europe, so he's not sure what time zone he's in. But I would, if there was an opportunity in the future, to invite you back, but maybe to talk to some of my naughty business people, that there are other ways of making money, and ethics is one of them. The final point I'll just say is that sometimes randomly I'll speak to young people in the corridor. Why? Because they come for interview, what have you. And I was a bit disappointed because I put the question to them, do you think you can be ethical and rich? And they kind of hum and they har and they give me caveats, and why can't you just say yes? and then I realized, but why would they say yes? Because they have so many bad role models, right? We need good role models to show them that you can be ethical and rich. And see, so that finally is my last point on this, which is I'm worried about the ethics of my younger ones. Maybe too late for all of us, but it's the young ones we need to focus on to make them realize that actually it is possible to be ethical and rich. And more so, it is not weakness to worry about your fellow man. So I'll just stop there, and I hope that kind of answered your question.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, I think you mentioned very important points. Well, universality of some of our ethical concept. in Islamic finance. I mean, we sort of tend to differentiate Islamic finance and conventional finance, but actually in the context of sustainability, the same. And actually, if we do not think of these sort of ethics, those capitalism shouldn't be sustainable. So it is important, and business and ethics should coexist. But in that context, I'd like to ask Shibusawa-san, because actually he runs a business. He founded asset management company, and also he's making impact investment. So in what sense, how you try to capture the impact, or in what way we can promote the impact investment, or how, what will be the sort of secrets, how we can incorporate these sort of impact concept into the ordinary finance. Please share with your thoughts and experience.
Sure, thank you very much. If I get directly into your answer to your question, Chairman, please talk about the younger generation. I had this experience. I attended this peace forum in Nagasaki, Japan, the second city to be, bombed by the atomic bomb. And it was a pretty big forum convened by the local authorities, local businesses, and they partnered with this international organization called One Young World. Started in the UK, but it basically 2,000 of young people come around from all around the world for what's called the Young People's Davos. It's not a Davos event, but it's sort of that kind of atmosphere. And they had their sort of Japan chapter, and they coordinated with this for this peace forum. They called it peacepreneurs, so peace entrepreneurs. And a good crowd, and a lot of international young generation attendees as well. On the opening night, this young woman gets up, Middle East, Islamic, really angry. And she's saying, like, you adults, you're messing up our future. You're just screwing it up. And especially it's the 4 C's that you guys are just totally losing it. And the first C was conflict, because she was from a conflicted area of conflict. The second was climate. That's the second C. Yeah. The third C was corruption. Yeah. The fourth C, you can guess what it was, right? She says capitalism. Capitalism is the root of all evil, and she was really angry. And I'm thinking, like, yeah, I get it, but if there was no capitalism, you wouldn't be on a plane coming to Nagasaki. But she was real. That anger was real, right? And so getting that back into your question, to me, I'm thinking, like, but I don't want to give up on capitalism. Because what's the alternative? You have socialism. Yeah, socialism has its merits, but socialism is all about you have your pie and how you divide it. And who decides going to divide it? Well, somebody, the big brother or somebody, right? Whereas capitalism is a lot more messy. The kitchen's very, very messy. But it's about creating that pie. So to me, what capitalism can provide is for the future. A future that's not foreseen yet, but a mode to create a new value for the future. And so to me, the reason why I started Commons Asset Management, getting back to your original question, was the fact that there was a lack of long-term capital or long-term thinking in the Japanese capital markets, I felt 15 years ago. And who can provide that long-term capital? Well, it could be the bank, the insurance companies or pensions, because theoretically they should be long-term, but in reality they're managed by organization boards and organizational hierarchy and things like this with reporting. So in essence, they really can't be long-term. And I'm thinking, like, well, who can be long-term? I thought, oh, that's me, and me, not just myself, but person like me who had, let's say, from 2000, when I first had my first child, started putting aside a little bit of money every month for his future, equity investments, dollar cost averaging. I did that for my second son, third son. And I found out that when the market, this is in 2000, so when the IT bubble burst, basically, so the market was always going down. But I felt fine because, like, you buying, a same units every month, and that it goes down, you get to buy more. So it's like, hey, this is great. And this is when I figured out that you could feel good investing when the market's going down, if you do this dollar cost averaging. And I thought, well, heck, if it by me, I'm not going to be providing long-term capital by myself, obviously. But if there are like-minded people all around Japan that say, hey, let's put aside a little bit of money every month for your children's future, your future, pull it together in one fund, well, then we can have a long-term conversation with our companies we invest in, hopefully that for their sustainable growth creation. And that's why it's called Commons Asset Management, because we're trying to create a common ground where these kind of like-minded people can come, put together. And I talked about the dropping dewdrops coming together. Well, unfortunately, we're not a mighty river yet, but that's basically the concept. That's where it started. And so the impact, going back to your impact part, is the fact that, well, it's also for it's a cross-generational thing, right? Because if you're only worried about your life today, now, and nothing's going to happen after you die, go away, well, what the heck? You just live for today. But if you think about it, you're passing the baton not to your children, genetic children, but to the future generations. And in that sense, we have the responsibility, and we not just the responsibility, but just our, what's the right word for it? The guiding principles. The guiding principles that we have, they say, hey, we should be leaving a better world tomorrow than today, and making sure that the young generations aren't pointing their fingers at you and saying, hey, you guys are really screwing this up. So.
Yeah. Just add, Tomo. I think, like you, I seem to be surrounded by very angry young people. 18 years ago, my daughter forced me to watch The Inconvenient Truth, the one with Al Gore. And at the end of it, she turned to me and said, Dad, your generation are screwing it up for mine. What are you personally going to do about it? Personally, So I said, we got rainwater harvesting, solar panels, but not enough. So in the end, what I did, because I was a partner in PwC at the time, we actually set up our sustainable practice 18 years ago. And the partners were very happy because immediately I managed to win a large project, so I could show my partners can make money. But really, it was about trying to meet my daughter's expectation. So, in fact, the other day I had a conversation with her and I said, after 18 years, this is what I've achieved. Is that enough? She says, no, Dad. You still have more to do. So, yeah, angry young people.
Yeah, thanks. This ASEAN+3 Bond Market Forum, we have a lot of policy makers. So I think this gives us a kind of thinking, in a way, in terms of making policy, how we can internalize economic externality. That's one point. And also, Chairman Faiz and Shibusawa-san mentioned kind of a generational issue, which also raised the question how the policymaker can think of sort of a different time horizon or economic stance, the inconsistency in a time frame, because the people tend to have kind of a very myopic decision making, just only focusing on the short term. So these are, I think, an important question when we think about sustainable finance. Well, I'm mindful of the time, so I'd like to open the floor for the question first. Do you have any question, comments? No? Okay, yeah, the one. Yes. Yeah.
Good morning, Nelly Dagdag, DTCC. I have to thank the speakers because this must be the best ever ESG or post-ESG conversation that I've attended. I was literally like not I was full attention. It resonated a lot to me. And you said that your daughter is angry. My daughter is angry. How come our daughters are angry? My daughter just swore that she will never work for a company, for a corporation. So it's all about this, that our generation is not doing enough. So this is very, very relevant, impactful to me. Thank you so much. Congratulations for having this session.
Am I right in saying that you're from the Philippines? So I was having a chat with my counterpart, Commissioner Francisco, right? Who, by the way, sings beautifully. I think it seems to be a Filipino thing. But he was telling me, you have what, 20 typhoons a year now, that they're getting increasingly more destructive. And that's why at the ACMF level, we're already starting to think, well, actually, yes, energy transition is important, but then as a region, we don't contribute much to the number. And let's face it, we didn't create this problem. Unfortunately, we will suffer from the problem. So that's why we feel that as a region, we should be talking more about adaptation and mitigation. I mean, for example, I don't know whether my palm trees will be able to produce palm oil if it's 2 or 3 degrees hotter. No idea. I don't know how much of my coastline we're going to defend. I mean, we have, what, maybe about 1,000 kilometers of coastline. And if we are going to protect it, where's the money going to come from? So that's why you will see in 2025 under our chairmanship, we're going to start talking about these things. True, it's not all our problem. I mean, there are many government agencies that have a responsibility for this matter. But as capital market regulators, we've got to now figure out whether our markets need to be right-sized. You know, can we take, for example, long-term infrastructure projects, not 3 to 5 years Sukuks or bonds, but 10, 20 years? Allied to that is another problem. We're all getting old. Singapore tell me they're 2 years away from being super aged. I think Japan is already super aged. And I think there was another country, I think Thailand is already super aged. And then the question comes, who's going to finance their living when they're retired? So then the question of returns comes back. Most of them, their retirement plan is based on capital market products. So are the products generating the right returns? So all this, unfortunately, is us. We're the regulators. We need to start thinking about this. And I was telling Ken last night that if you notice our building, and some of you have been here a few times, it looks like an ark, right? And the thing about arks is that the people in the ark know what the people outside the ark don't know, or what's coming. So actually, it's our responsibility as people in the ark to start to plan. They may not get it yet, but when it starts to get bad, hopefully some of the things that we start will help mitigate that problem. So if there's anything you want to take away from this, is Mars. Mitigation, adaptation, resilience, and so on. I'm actually asking my Filipino counterpart to co-chair that committee, because I think Vietnam and the Philippines are the 2 most countries at risk within the ASEAN region in terms of climate change. And so, you know, you were saying, Tomo, about policy. Yes, we need to build, obviously, the bond markets, but now we have another purpose. We need to figure out a way of getting the whole of society to solve the problem and not just leave it to government. Otherwise, they'll just tax you more. So we've got to figure out a way of spreading the burden and making sure that our angry young daughters are looked after.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, I'm mindful of time, and also important part of this in-person event is the interaction during the coffee break. So I'd like to ask a final word from Shibusawa-san, and then I'd like to have a break. So Shibusawa-san.
Sure. Again, thank you very much for the invitation to be here. Just one thing that's happening interesting in Japan. Hopefully that'll continue. We had the elections yesterday and they looked a little bit kind of ugly. So hopefully the policy that's already into place will just keep on rolling along. But Well, one is the development assistance of Japan. It's been doing a lot, obviously, in ASEAN and other parts of the world. But it's always been, in forms of loans and some grants and things like this. But finally, there's this. They're turning the dial just a little bit in terms of allowing to use ODA for, I guess, what we would call concessionary finance, first loss kind of, so more of to use the government money not just for direct or loans or grants, but as a catalyst to invite private sector investment into the development world. And to me, Japan's, I mentioned we were in a new era, and back in the old era when Japan was successful, it was this model called Made in Japan, and we were so successful that the Americans got mad at us and started this what we call bashing. So the next 30 years, we said, oh gosh, I'm sorry, we'll make it in your country, made by Japan. So it went from made in Japan to made by Japan. But now the reason why I think we're in the new era is because, just the chairman said, in Japan's getting really old really, really quickly, which means we're going to a reverse pyramid, which means we cannot rely on the made in Japan model anymore or made by Japan, but I think it should be made with Japan. Yeah, with ASEAN. I do work in Africa, which is very, very far away in many aspects, but that's where the population growth is. And if you just have a growing population, that's not good because you have a lot of unemployed young men, and you see a lot of unemployed young men, nothing good ever happens, right? So, so there's lots of, social disparity gaps that exists all around what we call the global south. And to me, the role of Japan in this new era to say, we don't have all the answers, but working together to co-create, maybe we can find that answer, so.
Thank you. So again, I'd like to ask you to give the big round of applause to the two gentlemen. Thank you so much. So let's have a break. So please come back 11:10. Thank you.